Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling one of the most uh, celebrated and, frankly, debated business concepts of the last decade or so, creating shared value. You'll often see it called CSV.
Right. And this idea, which was really popularized by Michael Porter and Mark Kramer back in 2011, it came with this incredibly grand ambition.
It wasn't just small-scale change, was it?
No, not at all. Their goal was, and they said this explicitly, to reshape capitalism and its relationship to society. I mean, they wanted to fundamentally redefine the purpose of the corporation.
That is a staggering mission statement. What was it about the concept that made it so seductive to managers all over the world?
Well, the proposition is just so elegant. The idea is that making a profit doesn't have to conflict with solving major social problems.
A win-win?
The ultimate win-win, exactly. CSV argues a company can look at huge societal challenges, public health, resource scarcity, whatever it is, and turn them into real business opportunities. You solve the problem, and you make more money.
And it didn't hurt that it came from Michael Porter, a giant in business strategy.
Oh, that was key. But as you know, for any deep dive, we have to look at both sides. So today, we're going to look at why it was so successful, but then we're really going to unpack the major critiques from academics like Crane, Palazzo, and Matten.
Right, because they identified some serious shortcomings.
They did. They pointed out 4 big flaws: that it's unoriginal, that it completely ignores the tensions and trade-offs in business, that it's dangerously naive about compliance, and, well, that it's based on a pretty shallow idea of a corporation's role in society.
So our mission today is to figure out if this is a genuine breakthrough or just a brilliant piece of marketing for old ideas.
Yeah.
But before we get into the framework, there's one key detail to lock in. CSV defines value as benefits relative to cost.
Yes, not just benefits alone. That focus on efficiency is absolutely foundational.
Okay, so to really get the critiques,
Mm-hmm.
we need to understand the strategy itself first. How did Porter and Kramer actually define creating shared value?
The official definition is policies and operating practices that enhance the competitiveness of a company while simultaneously advancing the economic and social conditions in the communities in which it operates.
So it's about integration, not just adding on a charity project.
Exactly. And they gave managers a very concrete roadmap with 3 main ways to actually create this shared value.
What's the first one?
The first is reconceiving products and markets. This is really about looking for social needs that your company can meet with its core business.
So not a side project.
No, not at all. They pushed companies to look beyond their usual customers, especially towards developing economies, the whole bottom of the pyramid idea. The goal is to find a place where serving new customers and doing good for society happen at the same time.
Like creating a low-cost, high-nutrition food product for a community that needs it.
Precisely. You're changing what you sell and who you sell to, all based on a real social need.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the second way to generate CSV?
The second is redefining productivity in the value chain. This one's more internal. It's about improving the social, environmental, and economic capabilities of everyone in your supply chain.
So things like energy use, logistics.
Yes, exactly. If you can make your logistics greener or your procurement fairer, you often find that you're also cutting costs and making your supply chain more reliable. Environmental savings become a strategic advantage.
That's an easy one to see the alignment on, efficiency and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And the third?
The third way is enabling local cluster development. This is the big picture one. The idea is that companies don't succeed in a vacuum. They rely on healthy local clusters.
Clusters sounds a bit academic. What does that mean in practice?
It means the whole ecosystem around the company. Your specialized suppliers, the local roads and ports, the universities training your future employees, even the local government regulations.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say you're a manufacturing firm and you need highly skilled welders. Instead of just trying to hire the few that are available, you invest in the local vocational school. You help them buy better equipment. Maybe you help design the curriculum.
Okay, so you're building up the local talent pool.
Exactly. You get a steady supply of skilled workers, which lowers your training costs. And at the same time, you've helped the local community's economy. It feeds right back into your own long-term success.
That framework is really clear.
Yeah.
And it obviously worked because the sources show this idea just exploded. It was a massive hit.
Huge. CEOs loved it. It was all over the Harvard Business Review. Academic citations went through the roof. It even won the 2011 McKinsey Award.
So why? What were the conceptual strengths that made it catch on so fast with people actually running companies?
I think the biggest factor was what you could call strategic elevation.
Having Michael Porter's name on it.
That was everything. He's the authority on competitive strategy. So when he endorsed putting social goals at the center of strategy, it gave them instant legitimacy. It reframed CSR in what the critics called appealing managerial language.
So it wasn't about duty anymore.
It was about opportunity. So a manager could go to the CFO and ask for $5 million for a social program, and they could frame it as competitive strategy using Porter's own logic. It wasn't just philanthropy.
It gave them the ammunition they needed.
Totally. The second strength was that they laid out a clear role for the government. This wasn't some free market solves everything idea. They specifically called for governments to set clear, measurable social goals and performance standards.
So they saw government as a key partner in this.
Absolutely. They needed regulators to help define what value even looks like, which is an interesting check on corporate power. And the third strength was that it acted as this big umbrella construct.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there were all these ideas floating around at the time, conscious capitalism, social entrepreneurship, social innovation. CSV gave them all a home. It offered a single, streamlined framework for thinking about social progress and corporate profit together.
It brought order to the chaos, for managers at least.
Yes, it offered a path to integrated thinking, which is incredibly valuable when you're trying to manage a complex organization.
All right, now let's turn to the other side of the coin, the critics. They argued that Porter and Kramer only managed to replace CSR by creating what they called a largely unrecognizable caricature of CSR. Let's start with that first charge, unoriginality, the straw man argument.
Right. So P&K's whole premise was that existing CSR was just about charity, that it was separate from profit maximization. The critics just jumped on this immediately.
Because it wasn't true.
Not at all. It ignored decades of research on the business case for CSR. The whole idea that being responsible can yield substantial business-related benefits was already a well-established field of study called strategic CSR.
So Porter and Kramer acted like they invented the idea that doing good could be good for business.
Essentially, yes. They also seem to completely ignore instrumental stakeholder theory.
Which says what?
It basically says that if you treat your stakeholders well, your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your company will perform better financially. It's the very definition of a win-win. The critics pointed out that this is largely synonymous with CSV.
And P&K just didn't mention it.
They were silent on it. They never engaged with Ed Freeman's principle that creating value for stakeholders creates value for shareholders. Plus, people saw CSV as just a rehash of social innovation ideas that others had been writing about for years.
But the most damning thing seems to be that the legal version of this already existed.
Yes. By the time they published their big article, nearly 20 U.S. states had already passed benefit corporation legislation. This is a legal structure that requires a company to pursue both profit and a material positive social impact. The concept was already being written into law.
Okay, so it sounds like the critics felt P&K just put a really great brand on a set of existing ideas. Let's move to the second critique, ignoring inherent tensions.
The Happy Land critique, as some called it.
Right. P&K claimed their idea moved beyond trade-offs. Why is that insistence on a perfect win-win so problematic?
Because, as the critics point out, many of the toughest business decisions are actually dilemmas. They're zero-sum.
Like wages.
Wages are a perfect example. If you're in a highly competitive market, paying your suppliers in, say, Southeast Asia a much higher, more decent wage directly increases your costs. And the market for virtuous products isn't always strong enough for you to get that money back from customers.
So sometimes you genuinely have to choose between maximizing your profit and doing the right thing socially.
Exactly. And even the positive examples P&K used didn't always hold up. They love to talk about microfinance as a great CSV success.
But the research later showed problems.
Big problems. Research showed it's incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible, to keep both the social mission and the financial goals alive in that sector over the long term.
What happens?
It's a process called diffusion and drift. As these microfinance organizations get bigger and need more money, they start chasing institutional investors. And those investors want financial returns. So the focus drifts away from serving the poorest clients and towards serving slightly wealthier clients who are more profitable. The financial goal ends up eating the social mission.
That's a powerful example of that tension. And this leads to another problem, right? The danger of cherry picking.
Yes, the myopic focus.
Right.
The critique is that CSV encourages companies to only focus on these new, easy, positive win-win projects.
While ignoring the harm their main business might be doing.
Exactly. You get food companies like Coca-Cola getting praised for brilliant CSV projects on local water access, which is great. But at the same time, their core business is selling products with massive amounts of sugar, salt, and fat, which contributes to global health crises. The CSV projects can become a strategic distraction.
That brings us to what I think is the most shocking critique. Compliance naivete. And it comes down to a single sentence in their work.
It's an incredible sentence, they wrote. Creating shared value presumes compliance with the law and ethical standards, as well as mitigating any harm caused by the business, but goes far beyond that.
The critics called that a remarkable piece of finessing. Why is presuming compliance such a big deal?
Because, the critics argue, it's a complete fantasy. They point out that for global corporations, non-compliance, things like sweatshop labor, environmental damage in countries with weak laws, that is the most urgent social problem.
So by just assuming it's already fixed.
You give companies a free pass, you let them focus on the low-hanging fruits of easy win-win projects instead of tackling the really hard, messy, expensive work of cleaning up their own supply chains.
That's like you're saying, if the rule book is broken, just pretend it isn't. You never have to address the root cause.
Precisely. You end up rewarding a company for doing an optional good thing, while ignoring the fact that the most valuable thing for society might be for them to just follow the law everywhere, even when it's expensive.
So this whole debate really boils down to a fundamental conflict. Should business use its self-interest for good, or does it sometimes have to abandon self-interest? How did Porter and Kramer defend themselves?
Their defense was very much corporate-centric. They basically accused their critics of wishful thinking, of insisting that profit-seeking enterprises need to abandon their core purpose.
They doubled down.
They did. They said the whole reason CSV works is because it aligns social progress with corporate self-interest in a concrete way. For them, leveraging self-interest is the only way to get things done at scale.
Which sounds practical, until the critics point out this huge irony. The cooperative logic of CSV seems to directly contradict Porter's own classic five forces framework.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The five forces model is all about competition. It views everyone else in the business environment, suppliers, customers, local communities, not as partners, but as threats.
As competitors for the profit pool.
Right. They are forces you have to bargain against and neutralize to keep your share of the profits.
So on one hand, Porter's classic strategy says you have to fight your stakeholders for every dollar. On the other hand, his new CSV model says you have to cooperate deeply with them to grow the pie for everyone. That's a pretty major inconsistency.
It's a fundamental paradox. His earlier work is all about gaining a disproportionate share of the benefits. The logic is competitive. CSV tries to paper over that inherent conflict.
So if CSV is this go-it-alone corporate strategy, what's the alternative that the critics propose for tackling these huge global problems?
They argue for something much broader, multi-stakeholder processes. They say systemic problems need systemic solutions, not just one company trying to get a competitive edge.
And they have examples of this.
Oh yeah, these aren't just theoretical. They point to real-world examples like the Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC, or the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil.
What makes those models different? Why are they better in the critics' eyes?
Because they're based on democratic principles and on creating rules that apply to everyone in an industry. The goal isn't for one company to do a nice project and win. The goal is to raise the ethical and operational baseline for the entire sector.
It's about system-level change, not just one organization optimizing its own position.
Exactly. It's about transformation, not just optimization.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. The central tension seems so clear now. Is CSV this transformational concept that cleverly harnesses self-interest for social good? Or is it just a powerful new brand for old ideas that lets companies sidestep the really tough ethical fights?
I think the takeaway from the sources is that CSV tries to solve a system-level crisis, the very legitimacy of capitalism, with what are basically firm-level organizational changes.
The tool doesn't match the scale of the problem.
Exactly. The solution just doesn't seem big enough for the problem P&K identified.
And that leaves you with a really profound final thought. If CSV only works when you presume that all the hard stuff, like compliance and ethics, is already fixed, what does that say about what we really expect from big corporations today?
Right.
Are we really asking them to transform society? Or are we just asking them to run some profitable side projects that maybe distract us all from the urgent need for better rules and stronger enforcement for everyone?
The critics would say the real task is to find a rigorous and comprehensive conception of both the corporation and society. We have to think about them together from the start, not try to bolt society onto an economic model later.
Something to think about the next time you hear a company promising to save the world while maybe ignoring the mess in its own backyard. This has been The Deep Dive.